good danger, steady on. Now's your chance. Arsenal, sexy.
Hello and welcome back to episode number 57 of the TNC podcast. It's all change at TNC Towers. Chris Reeve has gone to the place I like to call Tim Pot Towers. Some like to call it Alton Towers. I'm not sure why when you've got the Pleasure Beach and Pleasurewood Hills on your doorstep, but we'll leave that there. And Connor Southwell joins me in another studio here in Great Yarmouth. Connor, great to see you, mate.
Nice to meet you.
How was your stay in Yarmouth? You're still here? You're still
here,
you're still living?
Still living, so so far so good.
Good. I do want to, before we get into football chat, we went to the fish and chip shop last night. Battered burger was your order.
All over it.
Never had anyone order battered burger. I had a taste. Possible game changer. Really
I recommend it.
Yeah, really nice.
To anyone out there, really, battered burger, the way to go.
And you didn't have any ketchup with it either?
No, I'm usually a barbecue sauce man, to be honest.
Sorry.
But that's all right. No,
sorry, I
that's
didn't
all right.
deliver that. Barbecue sauce, not a common sauce in the Reeve household. Anyway, we took the relatively long trip up to Sheffield yesterday, although we got there in pretty good time. 3.5 hours. It was for 89 minutes, or should I say 92 minutes, a relatively exciting football game. And I suppose for the neutral it was an exciting football game. However, Billy Sharp pops up at the end. There was his 40th league goal in 78 games, something like that.
I think that's what Colin Murray said last night.
Yeah,
we trust Colin.
We do trust Colin. Look, mate, whatever we say, it's now 1 point from a possible 9.
Yeah.
Still no wins on the board. It's disappointing.
Yeah, and ultimately, you can break down performances and say, well, this bit was good and this bit was good, but people are going to look at the table and they're going to look at the wins column, and the longer that is a 0, the more concern people are going to have going forwards, and question marks are going to be raised, I think.
I mean, we'll talk about the Sheffield United game a little bit more in detail in a moment. Let's take a step back to Tuesday night's game against Stevenage. They're actually doing quite well in the league, I think, still unbeaten. And they nearly shocked us, I think. The team was a little different. It was Shrabeni leading the line on his own. There was no Hernandez, there was no Rhodes, there was no Pukki from the start, and you could see that we're very reliant on them this season for goals going forwards.
Yeah, it was really disjointed in the first half, and it looked like a side who hadn't played much together. A lot of sort of younger bodies feeling their way into it. Perhaps Norwich were a bit surprised by Stevenage's physicality. They basically had 11 giants on the pitch.
Yeah. Didn't you say all of their forward 3 were above 6'4" or something ridiculous?
Yeah, it's something ridiculous like that. But to be fair to them, and to try not to sound patronising, they did attempt to play football, which surprised me a little bit. I was expecting them to be a bit sort of route one and play off the second ball, but they didn't. And they very nearly did shock Norwich, but it required the big guns to come on and change it. Your Kenny McLean's, Daniel Hernandez, and I don't think you can look at that performance and really pinpoint anyone in particular who really stood out to sort of stake a claim going forward.
And that's maybe the disappointing thing from Tuesday, despite the win. And yes, we've now got the joyous trip to South Wales in the next round on a Tuesday night from that. But there were 10 changes made in that game. A lot of them players would have been wanting first team football in the league going forwards. And maybe there weren't any real star performances, were there?
No, I think if you were going to sort of put your hat down and say 3, I think you'd probably look at Ben Godfrey, Zimmerman beyond that mistake he made for the second goal, and probably Max Aarons, although he wasn't tested defensively. Ben Godfrey was playing that position. So those are the 3 you sort of look at. Other than that, I thought it was all quite flat. And only when Hernandez came on did they have a real drive to sort of go beyond Stevenage playing a relatively high line.
And of course the formation was very similar. I know the defence was switched up slightly, was it? Did we have 3 centre-backs on the pitch? No, we didn't, did we?
No, it was a 4.
And Stiepermann in that weird kind of floating midfield role that we seem to be deploying in the league as well.
Made from that.
What are you making of this formation at the moment? Do you think it's working?
I think it's a little bit lopsided, isn't it? We get Norwich try and play width on one side and then play sort of like this inside midfielder who sort of is allowed to roam. They did it again yesterday. And it hurts them, for me, both offensively and defensively, because when they're trying to counter-attack, say like they did yesterday in the second half, you've got one width with Hernandez who's got chalk on his boots, and then on the other side, you're asking a lot of Ben Marshall to get up, and then if we then lose the ball, we're exposed defensively. So it's difficult for me. I'd like to see 2 natural wingers out there. And try and get crosses in the box, because ultimately Norwich now have a goal scorer in Jordan Rhodes who absolutely lives in the box. So that just seems like a bit, wasted to me, really.
Yeah, I mean, let's now go ahead to yesterday's game against Sheffield United, or Saturday if this goes up on the Monday. I mean, first 20 minutes, we both turned to each other and went, this is going to end badly, because they were on top, they were dominating down the flanks, weren't they? Lewis was struggling, Marshall was struggling, and that's maybe been I know Lewis had a fairly good game, but down the sides we looked fairly exposed.
Yeah.
There were balls coming into the box, we weren't winning headers, they go 1-0 up, and we're suddenly thinking this could be 3, 4, 5-0. That first 20 minutes, we did not assert ourselves at all.
No, we didn't. No, and the most concerning thing, particularly about how they used the wide areas, is that they were playing wing packs, and it was basically meant to be against two, but at times it was 2-on-1 for them when they sort of dragged a forward across. We really struggled to deal with that. I suppose if you want to take a positive out of that spell, it's the fact that Norwich didn't concede 3 or 4, where perhaps last season they might have done. They had that 10-minute spell where they sort of steadied the ship a bit and got themselves back into the game. But I was quite impressed with their opening 20. I thought the way they pressed us, restricted how Norwich could play, and they had to play it quicker, and that panicked things a bit. But yeah, I think the positive is they didn't crumble, and that they didn't concede 3 or 4 after that initial first goal, which could have easily have happened.
I mean, let's break down that Sheffield United first goal. It's a fairly routine corner thrown into the box. It's not outswing, it's not inswing. It's a floated ball in. You've got, I think it was Tete and Marshall on the back post defending one player, lose the header. First of all, that's your big mistake.
Yeah.
Cruel for me, the positioning's poor. It goes straight over him. And then Leitner on the line has to be doing better. So that's 4 players can't handle one header. For me, that's criminal. And if you're conceding goals like that, you can wave goodbye to any kind of success this season.
Well, I think they undid Norwich's set piece set up for a lot of set pieces. The second half they had 2 free headers.
And you actually turned to me before that goal went in, when the corner went, I don't like the way we're marking.
No. I mean, zonal marking. I think there was an example of the Championship. I think it was Swansea who had 6 men across the 6-yard box. Norwich had 4, so that left the front post and the back post exposed. You've got to cover those areas if that's what you're going to try and do. But to then drag 2 of the men who are meant to be covering the space in front of those to the back post, to then lose the header, it all sort of broke down and was messy. And particularly after the way West Brom scored the set piece and undid it last week, it seems really bizarre to me that they persisted with it.
And it was the same type of goal to that West Brom one. It was a ball thrown into the back post. The big man wins it at the back.
It was a nothing ball, wasn't it?
It was. It
was designed to get the ball back across the box, and instead he's been able to guide it over our goalkeeper, and into the back of the net. And yeah, it's really criminal to be honest.
It did look like an organisational problem with me yesterday, because I'm not sure if it was the setup that's fault. I know the whole zonal to man marking argument will go on forever, but for Tete and Marshall, arguably 2 of our smallest players, to be picking up, was it Leon? Who was it who scored the header in the end?
Egan.
He's a big lad.
Yeah.
Tete's under 6 foot. Marshall's a small lad. For them 2 players to be on him, first of all, is poor. I think there was also a situation in the second half where I think it was Egan again was roaming in at the back post, and no one had picked him up. No. And Tete was like, "Oh, I better mark him now." It didn't look like there was a plan of how to defend the set piece, and that persisted, and that pattern continued throughout the whole game. There were 2 similar instances in the second half that Sheffield United should have scored, 2 free headers, and it could have been game over. It's criminal.
It really is, and it's something they need to address at Colney, because they'll get found out. I think Sheffield United already worked out how to unlock Norwich through set pieces yesterday. West Brom, obviously, and word spreads in the Championship very quickly. Managers are on it, and set pieces is a strength of teams who are perhaps a bit limited technically. So they've got to sort that out. I think they've got to revert to man marking, to be honest, or go for a mixture of the 2, because the zonal isn't working and they're conceding too many goals from it.
We then, after that first 20-minute spell, grew into the game. I think Tim Krul made a really good save at 1-0. Hanley made a fantastic challenge at 1-0 that kept us, in the game. And to be fair, we grew. And I think the reason we did was we actually kept the ball for sustained periods, which we've struggled with at times, especially away from home. I wasn't at Birmingham, but at West Brom, we sometimes gave the ball away sloppily. Yesterday, for that second stage of the first half, I thought we looked really good. What was the difference between the first 20 and the second 20? The contrast in.
I think there was a moment where we got the ball out to Hernandez and basically cut through their press, And at that point, they sort of recognised that they were going to have to sort of sit back a little bit, and that allowed Norwich to get their foot on the ball and play. And it wasn't just the lateral side to side passing we've seen either. It was through the thirds. It was quite quick. It was a lot better, I thought. But as you say, it's just about scoring when you're on top.
Yeah.
They did obviously get the equaliser, but they didn't really create a lot in that period.
No.
And although possessionally they were pretty decent, in terms of offensive output, they didn't really have too much, which is perhaps a slight disappointment of that spell, which they were really impressive.
And we all know sort of Chris Wilder and what he's about. And to be honest, I think he does get stick. But if he was our manager, I think all Norwich fans would love him. He's one of their own. He's a good guy for them. Tactically, I thought they set up pretty spot on. I think our main outlet in previous games, of course, Hernandez. But you then look to Timu Pukki, who receives the ball with his back to goal. Often when Norwich are at pressure, that's often the outlet ball, isn't it? Ping it into Timu, he'll hold it up, he'll pick a pass. That's what we didn't have this season. That's what impressed me so much this season, that we've got an outlet for when we're under pressure. Yesterday, Pukki was receiving the ball straight away. There's two midfielders on him. He hasn't seen that previously.
Yeah.
He had a lot of time against West Brom, a lot of time when he came in against Stevenage. Yesterday, received the ball, tackled every time. Yeah. And I think that just put us straight on the back foot again, didn't it?
Yeah. Well, his game is finding pockets of space and being the man who gets the ball through, to the next stage of the attack. And their midfield was so condensed and so restrained that he's really struggled to find any space. And every first touch was taking him back towards the Norwich goal. So, they defended him brilliantly in particular, I think, and nullified that threat pretty quickly.
Now, for me, before we talk about this Billy Sharp goal, for me, having watched 4 or 5 games of Norwich City in pre-season and the season now, it's a fairly easy fix. I say it's an easy fix. I think it's an easy fix, and I'll get onto that in a moment. But for me, blame has to go to Farke for yesterday. And I know we had chances yesterday. We'll talk about one of them chances now. Maurice Leitner in the second half. It's a lovely break from Norwich City, despite having nearly screwed up through a misplaced Alex Tete pass. But the misplaced Alex Tete pass, for me, his legs are tired. Get him off, get Godfrey on, get Thompson on. You've got replacements. Leitner misses the chance. He'd had a poor game already. Get him off, get Godfrey, or get Thompson on. Them substitutions late once again, for me, killed us.
Yeah, it's hard to disagree with that, isn't it? I think there was a spell from about 65 minutes after that Leitner chance where they were absolutely pounding us.
Yeah.
And at that point, you think, just make sure you don't lose a game, because at this level, away points can be so crucial in the long run. Okay, you don't win the game, but people look at it in a slightly different way.
Momentum, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly. And after West Brom, that was needed. I think just a bit of solidity and to give people a little bit of optimism again. So the main thing is don't lose the game. So for me, bringing on Shrubeni was perhaps a little bit naive, I think. I know he did it at Birmingham and it worked, but it was sort of a different circumstance.
Yeah.
We were on top in that game. Sheffield United sort of were coming on top. And we still looked threatening on the counter at that point. You've got Hernandez, who's a threat for anyone. So, for me, bring Godfrey on, bring Thompson on, and just make sure you don't lose the game. But, substitutions were a bit silly for me yesterday.
And you described Leitner as a passenger yesterday, and I completely... I do like Leitner. I think there's definite talent there, and I think his criticism, certainly against West Brom, was maybe uncalled for yesterday. I think he deserves all the criticism he'll get. Gave the ball away at times, and I'm not sure if it's his fault or it's Farke's fault, because that role in which he plays, what is his role? He's not really a number 10. He's not really a defensive midfielder. He's not a winger. What does he do?
It was almost putting him in the team to accommodate him, wasn't it? Which you can't do, particularly at this level. You've got to be a special player to do that. But I'm Leitner's biggest fan. I think he's brilliant, but it's all about finding a place in the team where you can extract the best of his qualities, and Norwich haven't found that yet, and Farke haven't found that yet. And until they do, they he doesn't warrant chucking in. Because
that's only going to damage him.
Well, yeah, exactly. And yesterday he was playing this sort of strange wide role. He looked uncomfortable for a lot of it. He didn't get on the ball. He didn't make things happen, which is his quality. So.
I think it was similar. His performance yesterday replicated Cantwell's on Tuesday.
Yeah.
Cantwell isn't a winger. He's not a player that. And I think Farke likes changing people's positions. We've seen Jamal Lewis go from a winger to a left back. We've seen Max Aarons go from a right back to a left back to a winger. I think he likes sculpting these players. However, sometimes I think just keep it simple. He completely stifled Cantwell's creativity on Tuesday. I think he had a good game, Cantwell, but he could have been better, I think. Yesterday, I don't think an away game against Sheffield United is Leitner's type of game.
I'd agree with that.
For me, it's a home game for Leitner to really come into his own. And when I've seen him at home, he's looked good. Away games, I'm never too convinced. And after seeing Godfrey's performance on Tuesday and after seeing Thompson's performance on Tuesday, that energy in midfield, we lacked so desperately yesterday. I don't mind Tete. I think he's maybe passed it a little bit. But yesterday, it's just the lack of legs on him that worries me. And that's what disappointed me so much about this Kenny McLean injury, because he's that injection of pace that we so desperately needed. And to go from that to Tete is like, we're back to square one here. Yeah,
I think you hit the nail on the head yesterday on the radio where you said he's the most like Johnny Howson that we've had in terms of bringing the ball out of midfield.
And this is McLean we're talking about, not Tete.
Not Tete, no. And I'd agree. I think he was a big loss yesterday, particularly in them opening periods where Norwich needed someone to get their foot on the ball. I think he would have been excellent. And also then you could have probably put Pookie in a wide position and played him sort of behind the striker, and that would have given you a bit more midfield balance. It's a big loss, and it's a shame because Stevenage looked really impressive when he came on. Really liked looking at him at Birmingham. Obviously, I wasn't at West Brom.
He looked good in that as well.
So I'll take your word for that. It's disappointing that he's going to be out until after Ipswich.
But I suppose the thing is here, it's all ifs and buts. At the end of the day, Norwich fans aren't going to take excuses. We saw on Twitter yesterday when Paddy Davitt tweeted out that quote from Daniel Farke that we're currently the best team in the league in terms of, I think, shots on target, shots off target, passes completed, something like that. All of these stats that, at the end of the day, are mostly irrelevant. We need to be winning football matches. There is no excuses this season.
There's no excuses because Patience was already wearing thin. What is it, 3 wins in 19 now or something? So that's relegation form. If we're being completely honest.
We're down. We're rock bottom. We're in League One already on that form.
And you can play as well as you want, but points win prizes and performances are largely forgotten. So you can play as well as you want if you lose a game 1-0. And you keep doing that, you're going to end up.
I agree, and I think the performance against West Brom for 45 minutes was good. I wasn't at Birmingham. You said in patches it was good, but I don't think yesterday's performance was outstanding. It was okay, but I don't think we can. I know the goal came in the 93rd minute, and of course that's really tough to take. But I don't think we can be overly sad that we lost 2-1 because I don't think the performance warranted much more. I think a fair result would have been 1-1. I think we had chances, Sheffield United had chances, they took one more chance than us, but to say that this was a performance to really get excited about, I disagree. I don't think it was. I think we've got the ability to create them performances, but for large parts of the game yesterday we were dominated by a side that's led by Leon Clark and Billy Sharp, and I know that's an effective championship strike force, but it's Leon Clark and Billy Sharp. So I don't know, mate. I just think that I don't know where this is going, and that's my worry. It looks very reminiscent to a lot of games we saw last season. We all know how that ended.
Yeah, it's a real lack of plan B, isn't it? Norwich don't have the ability to mix it up, or rather they don't want to mix it up. And you can be as stubborn as you like and say we've got to play in this way, but if you can't win games, there's going to be a point where you say, right, this way isn't working, we need to look at this way or this way. And that's not to say it's long ball, it's not to say it's put 11 men behind the ball and play for a point, but they've got to do something differently, otherwise they're going to keep losing games, and that pressure is just going to mount on Daniel Farke.
And I know that consistency for a bit of last season when we went to keep, was it 10 clean sheets or 8 clean sheets in a row, whatever, did work for us, but we've now seen the same formation and largely the same players for the first 3 games of the season. The first 2 games, picking up a point away at Birmingham was good, but at the end of the day, it took the last kick of the game to salvage a point against the team under a transfer embargo. We lost last week. I know they've just crushed QPR 7-1, but they were there for the beating. And then yesterday we lost to Sheffield United. For me, that shouts something has to change here. Whether that's the formation, whether that's the personnel, whether that's something. Because if we keep playing like this, we're going to keep losing.
Yeah, it doesn't suggest progression that they're all after, does it? And they've. I mean, to be fair, they've rectified some things. I think the whole getting balls into the box to a degree they've rectified. They've obviously brought in some better attacking players who can score goals, but then they've sacrificed the defensive solidity that we saw last year. So it's a juggling act, and at the moment they're not juggling well enough. And
let's talk about that Billy Sharp goal then. It's first of all, I think it's Marshall down the right. He loses the ball to McGoldrick, doesn't he, who came on.
Yeah.
McGoldrick then recycles that, I think passes it out to the right-hand side. It's a long looping ball into the back post. Marshall loses his header. Closer loses his man. Billy Sharp taps in. Now, for me, the easy fix, I say easy fix, I've said it in my predicted 11. The team sheet is right there that I wrote down. It's 2 wing backs and it's 3 centre backs. Marshall isn't a right back.
No.
He's not. I'm not having it. He's too small. He's too much of an attacking threat to be stifling at right back. Jamal Lewis, I thought was good yesterday.
I thought he was good yesterday.
But he's not a left back. He's a left wing back. We've lost too many headers this season. Mm-hmm. Hanley hasn't been as good as he was last season, and Closer was okay. But look, I think you put 3 centre backs in there. You put your 2 wing backs and you sacrifice that weird floating midfielder role.
Yeah.
And I don't think you lose in that game yesterday, because Marshall, I thought he had a good game, but you can't expect him to be winning every header of them long balls, especially when you've got men running in behind him.
Yeah.
And I think Closer maybe should have done better. He lost his man, but it's just I think them small changes could make really big impact, and we're not doing it, and that's what frustrates me.
Yeah, just to go back on that goal, I think you broke it down quite well. You've got the ball in the box, which or the loss of the ball, which is self-inflicted.
Yes.
You've then got Marshall losing his header, again self-inflicted, and then you've got Closer being beaten by someone who's 5'7" in the air. So self-inflicted again, and all of that is of Norwich's. That could have been stopped. At the essence and at the end of that attack. In terms of the 3 at the back, I agree. I think Norwich looked much more balanced last year when they had that 3. They seemed to balance being able to go forward and defending quite well, particularly when they had Tribal in there in front of that back 3, which I think suits him as opposed to being in front of the back 4. But yeah, they've now got the players to play wing backs. They've also got Paslak waiting in the wings, Aaron's waiting in the wings, who are players who want to get forward. Yeah. And it just seems a bit restrictive playing them in full-back roles and isolating them like that. So
because whatever you say, Marshall was still getting up the pitch in the way we played. Means he has to get up the pitch.
That's his instinct, isn't it? He's always been a winger. He wants to get forward and make things happen.
And Jamal is an athlete, and he got forward. I think even he was a little restricted yesterday and didn't maybe give the service going forwards. Mm-hmm. You say they're self-inflicted. We've conceded 8 goals in 3 games now. Include Stevenage, that's 9 in 4.
Yeah.
Every single one of them goals have come because of our mistakes.
Yeah, agreed.
Look, that's suicidal, isn't it?
Yeah, it is, and it's to be fair to Farke, it's fairly hard to sort of rectify as well, because you can't coach individual errors, you can't account.
No, you can't. But I think the errors have come because of poor formation decisions and not making substitutions.
Maybe more yesterday than West Brom. I think the Tim Krul slipping through his hands and the Ormerose penalty are the 2 moments you pick out of that, and so they're the errors. But yeah, in terms of, Ben Marshall's been caught out by a ball over his head twice. Yeah.
Is that his fault? I don't think so.
I think it just comes down, he's not a right back, is he? And
that's not his fault?
No, it's not his fault. It's not his fault at all. Norwich, have options at right back. I know Pinto was out yesterday, but they've got options there. They've got Paslak, and obviously the homegrown thing obviously comes into sort of weights itself up. But
that's also our fault, I may add.
Yes, yeah, it is. Yeah, so it's hard. It's hard for Marshall, because I know he's played a whole season at right back for Blackburn, but he looks caught out for me.
And I think we signed him as a winger as well.
I think we probably did, although it was quite telling in Farke's quotes when we signed him, saying he could play either side as a defender as well. I'm not convinced he can.
No.
Or not to the stand. Maybe he can fill in for a game, but in terms of the stand needed to mount any sort of challenge, I think Norwich needs to sort out them full-back areas, and pretty desperately.
Right, we'll try and round this Sheffield United game up, Connor. Let's just get then your kind of overall thoughts from that game. I don't think we went there expecting much, did we? But
no.
to go into the 93rd minute and it being 1-1 and also having missed glorious chances, it is slightly disappointing to walk away with no points.
Yeah, it's gutting, but it's predictable, isn't it? I think Norwich had chances to win that game, as did Sheffield United. It was one of those where a draw was probably a fair reflection of the game, but you couldn't have complained had any side have nicked it, I don't think. But yeah, it's a lot of question marks now and a lot to rectify ahead of Preston.
Enjoyed the day though?
Loved it, yeah.
Good. We'll get on to talking about Preston and Leeds in a moment. Let's get to your Twitter questions. A massive thank you to everyone who tweeted us questions. You can follow us at TalkNorwichCity. You can follow Connor. I'll link him in the description, and you can follow me. Links in the description. Also, let's get into the first question. This is Lewis Smith, who goes to the Norwich City home and away games. Good old boy. Would you take Paul Lambert back?
No,
neither. We'll move briefly on. I think you can look at Paul Lambert's history since leaving Norwich, and that explains all you need. Tony Lloyd, what is Tony? He's a family guy and a Norwich fan. Good man. Looking at our next few fixtures, Connor, where are our next points coming from? I don't like to be negative, but this is concerning. Preston at home, Leeds at home, Ipswich away, Middlesbrough at home, Reading away. Some really tough fixtures in there. And before you answer that, Connor, this is what my worry was, is we've had a tough start to the season, but we were looking at our schedule yesterday. There isn't an easy run.
No.
Not on paper anyways. It was always hard to predict. We could roll Leeds over in a few weeks' time and be looking at the top six. I can't predict it, and I don't think it will happen, but it is hard to tell. But this is my worry. We now go into Preston at home, which isn't an easy game. Alex Neil is going to be well up for that. They've got, I think, 4 points on the board. Leeds at home, one of the few teams in the EFL to still have a 100% record, flying under Bielsa, and then Ipswich away. Mate, that's not good.
No, my worry is when you're a side looking at fixtures and going, well, there's no sort of easy run. Maybe you're one of the poorer sides in the division. That's my worry. And yeah, it is a tough run, and I think it's a pretty pointless exercise circling games and saying they're winnable in this league, because it's this league is so unpredictable, and so for the majority of it devoid of quality, maybe beyond sort of your Leeds so far, Middlesbrough as well. And it is a tough run. I think most Norwich fans will be circling the game Wednesday night and saying, well, that almost feels like a must-win this early in the season, because maybe not in terms of how the season will end up, but in terms of thoughts on Farke, I think it's a must-win for him personally.
And once we've seen it with so many managers over the time, once you lose the fans, it's game over. I don't think you could win fans back over. My personal opinion.
No, I don't think he's lost all of the fans, but I think they're heading towards that way now. 3 wins in 19 is not good enough.
Or do you think fans still have confidence in the project rather than Farke? Because Webber's been very clear that the head coach is easily replaceable. This is why we've made this project. You can easily drop bits out and pull bits in, and hopefully it doesn't change too much. I think people are starting to lose faith in Farke personally.
Yeah, I think.
But I think people like to stick by this project.
Yeah, and I think you can stick by the project and not stick by Farke. To be honest, I think that's fine in this setup. If I'm Webber personally, I think I look at it and go, well, I've come in this club, I've tried to rip everything up and start again. I've put this man in the driving seat. He is my man. I'm going to look pretty stupid if that goes the wrong way. But then he's going to have the I'm trying to use the politically correct term, but the personality maybe to sort of identify that it's not working and pull it out and say, right, we need someone else. I'm not sure if he'll do that yet, mainly because he said on Thursday night about how the head coach isn't just judged on winning games, he's judged on how he's installing the philosophy, how he's developing young players.
And I love that, and I do love the project, I genuinely do. But you don't win the league in terms of who has the best philosophy.
No, you don't. And I wonder if he is still around maybe because of his ability to add money onto players. You look at Maddison, Murphy, and I think last season particularly Norwich needed that because they were in a big hole. This season they're a bit more stable. He's going to get judged a lot more for what happens on the pitch as opposed to what he does off it. And he could find himself in trouble if things don't turn quickly. So
where do you stand? Farke, I'm not going to say Farke or Farke out, but what's your gut say?
I think at the moment, after 3 games, it's really hard to sort of pin your colours to any mast. I've been relatively impressed by the performances, not blown away, but I think there has been improvement from last year in performances. But as I said earlier, performances are forgotten if you don't win games. So ultimately, if he can turn the performances that we've seen into points, I don't think Norwich will do too bad this year. But if we're sitting here, particularly before Ipswich without a win, I think major question marks going to be asked. And people are saying you can't judge him after 5 games, so it's not 5 games. It's the games before last season as well, and that'd be 3 wins in 22 or something.
Yeah.
It'd be a staggering record, I think.
Definitely. Bob Burrows, he's replied to my tweet that said, I tweeted out yesterday, but don't think we deserve to lose that, but at the end of the day, it's still no wins this season in the league. That's not good enough. Big reply needed. Bob Burrows has replied to that. But come on, Jack, I was there and they completely dominated us for large parts of the game. We could have nicked it, I know, with those 2 chances in the second half, but they created more. Agree, Bob. We don't look secure at the back, and surely he has to go 3 in there to get Zimmerman back in. Agree. I agree with all of that, Bob. And I think last season, Connor, we looked best with that 3 centre-backs and 2 wing-backs. For me, and that's why I wanted to see it at Sheffield, and that's why I think we lost, because we didn't deploy it.
Yeah, agreed, and we'd have matched them as well, because they played a 3 at the back and were really physical. For large parts, we couldn't get Jordan Rhodes in the game, which I think is why we struggled a bit more. I'd like to see Zimmerman back in. I think he is an imposing figure. I think maybe Godfrey as well in one of those defensive free roles I'd like to see as well, just to experiment and see if it works.
Yeah.
But yeah, I agree. I think if Norwich would have deployed that yesterday, I think they'd have been a lot more balanced.
Yeah. Ben Ambrose, he is saying, Connor, is all the fame getting to Connor's head? I hear he doesn't have any time for his day ones anymore. Now, Ben, I'll have to expose a little truth here. Connor brought a rucksack last night and I offered him the spare room and he said, no, I'm going to be sleeping on a bed of £50 notes tonight.
Yeah, well, that's true. Yeah.
And so not only is the fame going to his head, the money's going to his head as well. You saw him yesterday with them premium chocolates. You saw him yesterday with them 37p Jaffa cakes. I'm just saying, mate.
Yeah, it's not looking good, is it?
No, that tweet also got 4 favourites. One of the big performers.
Did it?
So nice work, Ben. Alex says, give the people what they want at Chris Revo. I think Chris is probably combusting somewhere in Alton Towers, just fuming at Chris Wilder, because he really does hate Chris Wilder. He hates Chris Wilder. So I'm sure Chris will be back soon. He's just riding the teacups at Alton Towers at the moment. Right, George Chris. Colin, this is probably one for you. He's put, if Farke has sold Maddison and Murphy, making around £30 million, then surely a manager should be using that money to sign quality players. I heard a rumour on Club Cabbage, and there's a lot of rumours spreading about Club Cabbage, that Farke is not being given the funds. So where on earth is this money going, Connor? And who is responsible?
Well, when you drop out of the Premier League, you get parachute payments. When you lose parachute payments, your revenue drops from about 40 million to about 8 million. Therefore, you've got a £20 million hole that you have to fill. Sold Maddison for north of 20 million. That's where that 20 million has gone. The Murphy money probably being spent largely on wages, I would imagine. And then the remainder of that is what you've got to bring players in. So that's where the money's gone. Yeah, it's no mystery.
And George, if you really want to bore yourself, mate, go on the Norwich City website, have a look at the club accounts. All companies have to post their accounts for the year. Norwich City, exactly the same. Have a look through the numbers.
You can, on those accounts as well, if you're particularly boring like me, you can work out how much Norwich have sold players for, if you're that boring.
Yeah. And we also saw yesterday, it's not all bad at Norwich, because we saw Sunderland last season, someone had scrolled through their accounts. They were paying £1,000 a month for someone to rearrange their plastic flowers in their offices.
Well, money well spent.
Money well spent, and maybe that's what we're lacking.
Get the bees in and,
Yeah, I mean, Stuart Webber talks about marginal gains. Maybe that's what we're lacking, greenery.
Yeah, I agree, yeah.
In the offices. Nick O'Brien replied to George's point, and I guess this reinforces it. He said, mate, the money's gone, and is still paying Malumbo's wages off.
Yeah, I think they're still paying quite a few players' wages off. Naismith, Ross Martin, Oliveira, they're all going to be on big money. Malumbo's another one, obviously released. They're probably going to still be playing a portion, I would imagine, and they'll still be paying transfer fees as well. They'll still be paying money for Yannick Wildschut and whatnot, who they have to pay for over 3 years. So,
and by the way, what's Yannick doing at the moment?
Oh, he's whipping out for Bolton.
There we go, and it's a shame that we haven't got a player who can score one-on-ones, much like Yannick Wildschut at Bolton yesterday. Alex, who once again is coming in, he says, Do you believe in karma, Connor? I think Rhodes does after that celebration and loss yesterday.
Yeah, he got carried away with it, didn't he?
It was a great celebration.
It was a great celebration. I think if one of their players did it at Hillsborough, they'd love it. So it's one of those. You hate it if it's against you. You love it if it's for you. I've got no problem with it.
And Chris Wilde's celebration certainly.
Exactly. Yeah.
They got their own back.
Exactly. Yeah.
Right, Callum Harrison. Currently, which position in the Norwich City team is the weakest in terms of ability and depth in the squad? And that comes from a Shakespeare Canary.
Full-back areas for me. I think they're the issues that desperately need addressing. I mean, the left-back situation will no doubt improve because Lewis is back. But that right-back situation, still question marks over Pinto. Marshall doesn't look comfortable.
I think we have 3 good wing-backs, don't we? But
We've got good wing-backs, but no out-and-out right-back. And if you're going to play with a 4, you need a right-back. So
does that mean we change the formation?
I think it suggests so, yeah.
Saluting Sabreni, good old Sabreni. He's back, love him. Based on recent games, and not meaning to be too negative here, Connor, but would you rather we have a few mediocre seasons in the Championship followed by several successful Premier League seasons, or get promoted this season but then only one season in the Premier League?
I'd never settle for mediocrity. I think you take your chances at going up this year and back Webber to spend money to survive, to be honest. I don't think if Norwich went up they'd be as reckless in terms of spending. So I don't think you can ever settle for mediocrity. I think the moment you do, you become mediocrity. Yeah. So for me, I'd always be promotion every time. I think
the worry for me is salute Sabreni is, and I said it last. I think the first podcast we done of this pre-season, we started it a decade-defining season. And for me, if we don't go up this season, which I don't think we will, and I didn't predict we'll be in this league for quite a while. I think it's just the way the finances work. I think you look at a lot of the clubs, Ipswich, Sheffield Wednesday, Leeds. There's a lot of big clubs in this league.
Yeah, it gets hard. The longer you're in it, the harder it gets to.
And that gap between the Championship and the Premier League.
Yeah, and I mean, Norwich have now been in this league 3 years, and people are saying, well, these fixtures are tough, and these fixtures are tough. 2 years ago, they were winnable fixtures. Yeah. So that just shows a change in mentality, I think, and I think it's going to become tougher, and it's already really tough for Norwich to get out of the league. I don't think they will this year, because I don't think they've got the squad to, but the longer you're in this division, the harder it is to get out of it. I mean, see Ipswich, see, as you say, Sheffield Wednesday, Leeds,
Yeah. Lewis Coleman, Connor, what has to happen for you to be Farke out?
I think this needs to continue for a sustained period. For me, he needs 18 months. So that you're probably looking at a couple of months, aren't you?
Yeah.
For him to sort of really be judged, but he's got his own squad now for the most part. It's his players that he's brought in, and it's his philosophy he's trying to put across. So the onus is all on him now. He's got no excuses. He can't hide behind the fact Norwich have sold players because he's attempted to replace them with his own. Yeah. So for me, rapidly sort of going the other way, I think.
Yeah, I think for me, mate, is we need to. I'm not overly fussed on results. Of course, we need to see results. I think we'll finish mid-table, and I stick by that. I don't think we're certainly not going to go down. I don't think we're going to go up. But what I'd like to see is Daniel Farke trying to change things within a game and also between games. Yesterday, for me, it was easy to see what we needed to change. It never happened. It was the same against West Brom. I think for large parts of the Stevenage game as well, I think he left it too late to change, and it was just because Stevenage lack of quality that we ended up getting through that game. I think it's undoubted that Farke's a good coach. I think we've seen the development of Onel Hernandez. Mm-hmm. He's got Jordan Rhodes scoring goals. He's got Timu Pukki playing some really nice stuff. He's brought Grant Hanley on from a Newcastle reject into one of the Championship's finest defenders. He's developed Maddison into a £25 million player. There is a good coach in there, and I do like him. But at the end of the day, as you say, Connor, it's 3 wins in 19 or whatever it is. Yeah. That's not good enough. And if that doesn't change quickly, then change is needed. Yeah,
I've always been very positive about Farke and the work he does off the pitch in terms of on the training pitch and his development of players. He tends to make players multi-positioned, if you like, which is a very continental German way of thinking of it. Ben Godfrey, who was solely a midfielder, he's tried to make a centre back, and it wouldn't surprise me if he tried to make him a full back and good at free position as opposed to outstanding in one, which is the German way. I like the guy. I really do like the guy, but it's about can he set up a team to win in this division? I wonder.
Yeah, and look, I think the deepest part about this, we often win when he's wearing the army green Parker. We often lose when he's wearing the black Parker.
Yeah.
Stuart Webber, you were at that fans forum on Thursday. He painted the away change rooms pink because it lowers testosterone and makes the away team calmer and stuff. And what does he turn the heating up to make them more fatigued or lethargic? We need to be looking at Farke's Parker choices, because that, I think, is what it's coming down to at the moment. Peter, now he's saying, would you take Mick McCarthy in for Daniel Farke when we get rid of him? In brackets, yes, I said when, not if. Mick McCarthy currently doing punditry on TalkSport, Sky Sports.
I mean, I personally wouldn't. I think Mick McCarthy really would be a statement of mediocrity, wouldn't it?
Took Ipswich in the playoffs?
Once, once. And didn't pan out the best for him, did it? No, I like Mick McCarthy as a guy. I just wouldn't particularly want him at my football club.
No,
but you know.
No, I agree. I love Mick McCarthy. You know what I'd really like to see? Him doing co-coms with Chris Gorham this season.
Love that. That'd be brilliant. Yeah.
Chris, if you're watching, or Rob, or whoever, someone at BBC Radio Norfolk, make that happen. Mick McCarthy on Radio Norfolk. I'd listen.
For the Derby games, that'd be good.
Oh, imagine. Lewis Fuller, Connor, what's your opinion so far on the partnership of Hanley and Close?
Maybe mine's a bit different to others. I think there you've got two international centre-backs who, yes, should be doing a lot better, but I don't think they've been given a lot of protection. I don't think Tetty looks particularly 100% fit at the moment. Tribal's had a relatively poor start to the season, I'd say. They've got fullbacks who aren't fullbacks. There's a lot of space down the sides. They're having to split. That leaves space in the middle. It's making them look a lot worse than they are. Of course, they shouldn't be conceding goals, but I think the more pressing issue is with the fullbacks and making sure the line as a four, if you're going to play with a four, is solid as a whole, as opposed to being sort of disjointed and players playing there who don't actually play there. That's my opinion. But yeah, they've got to do better.
Yeah, definitely. Joe Denton, this is an interesting one, Connor. Do you think that players are overcoached by Daniel Farke? Too many players having lapses of judgment has to be a link in there somewhere.
This is a really interesting point, yeah, and one that I hadn't put much thought in until I saw the question last night. I think it's a real possibility, yeah. If Norwich are being coached through every given scenario, you lack for any sort of spontaneity and freedom to play, which can be restrictive because then you're playing theoretical football as opposed to football in the moment.
Yeah.
And so that can lose. It can become predictable, I think. So I think it's definitely a possibility. Yeah. I wouldn't say no.
Yeah, I think for me, Farke's trying to give the forward players real freedom, and I think that's worked at times this season. I think for me, where this question becomes really interesting is through the middle of the pitch, where I was really impressed against West Brom because there was pace and there was tempo, and that's what really impressed me, and that's where I could kind of gloss over the defeat yesterday. It was very reminiscent of what we saw last season. I almost knew what pass was going to be played before it was played.
Yeah.
The movement off the ball was very strategic and I don't know.
Rehearsed.
Rehearsed. I think that's the word for it. So yeah, Joe, I think there might be something in that. Whether that will change, I don't think it will. It's tough, isn't it? But I think there's definitely something in that question.
I think simplicity prevails in this league, doesn't it? It's why Warnock and Wilder do so well, because they're not going to meticulously set up a team to go through every phase of play.
But we've all on the flip side, we've also seen Bielsa doing so well at Leeds, and he is very meticulous in the way he works.
He is, but he's more to do with space as opposed to where players are at given times. Players will exploit spaces as opposed to positions, which I think is slightly different because.
But it's still meticulous.
It's meticulous, but it's almost a different way of thinking about things, and that could still crash and burn. But Bielsa is a genius in his own right. He's taught Guardiola and Pochettino, so I'm not sure if the two are compatible really.
So you say Farke isn't a genius?
On the evidence I've seen over the last 18 months, not so far, no.
Docker Dobma saying Yannick is having a great start to his season at Bolton. Hate to say it, people, but I did tell you so. Would you recall him from his loan deal, considering we lacked width from one side of the pitch during yesterday's game?
No.
You wouldn't recall him?
No. If you're going to send out a player on loan, there's a reason for that, I think. And then Yeah, I think you've got to let the lad play football because ultimately he's not going to get it here, is he?
No, and I'm dead chuffed that Yannick's doing really well because, look, we signed a good player. We killed him at Norwich in the way we've sent him out. He's doing really well again. Good stuff for Yannick. And by the way, Bolton flying.
They are flying,
Absolutely flying.
I wonder how long they can keep it up for, but flying, yeah.
Yeah. And of course, they've got depth in the goalkeeping area now as well. Michael Bowers, Sunderland fan here, but do you think Norwich will stick with Farke? Do you think sticking with Farke is key to achieving anything this season? Also, where's Chris Revo buggered off to? He's done his one away game of the season. He might be turning up for Ipswich. He's gone to Tin Pot Towers, as I've said earlier, riding the teacups over there. Interesting question from Michael Bowers, Sunderland fan. They're struggling a little bit in League One this season. Is consistency needed? Do we stick with a manager and just give him as much time as he needs?
No, because I don't think you can stick with something that's not visibly not working. And as I say, I don't think Farke's a bad coach. I just think the way he sets the team up isn't right to this division. It's more continental, it's more German. Which is fine. I mean, it worked with Huddersfield, but they did it simply. It was just a high press and get the ball forward quickly. Norwich are more, he coaches Norwich more through the phases of play, which I think is different to Huddersfield.
So why can't we beat Huddersfield?
Because I think it's a different style. Wagner was very, I've got limited footballers, I'm going to do what I can do with limited footballers, which I think is often what teams who don't spend money have to do to get up. Paul Lambert was very like that. Norwich weren't the best footballing side in the division, but they got the ball out wide, they brought balls into the box, and they had Grant Holt up front who, loved being in the penalty area.
My argument for that would be we've had the opportunity to sign wide players, we've had the opportunity to sign the next Grant Holt.
Yep.
We haven't done it, we've chosen to go a different way.
Yep.
That's Farke's fault.
Yeah. I mean, I feel for Farke in the sense that he's been operating with his hands behind the back in terms of, he's watched his best players get sold. But
at the same time, Connor, and I do agree, he had Angus Gunn last season, he had James Maddison last season, he had Harrison Reed. We finished 14th.
Yeah, it's a fair point. It's a fair point, but on the other hand, you say, well, he lost Pritchard and he lost Murphy, and I know how much he was trying it. He was looking forward to playing with Pritchard and Maddison. So,
but do you think that would have taken us from 14th to 6th?
I think it might have taken us from 14th to 11th. I don't know if it would have taken us to 14th and 6th. So. Yeah, it's a difficult one. I'm not sure. I mean, I wish I had a crystal ball and I wish I could say, what he's going to do in the future. But he has to show some variation, otherwise fans are going to get pretty sick pretty quickly.
Yeah, we'll finish on this question from Reliable Roads. We love Reliable Roads, and he simply asks, "How reliable am I?"
On the evidence so far, fairly. 2 and 3.
The positives of this season has certainly been that front three, hasn't it? Pookie, I've been really impressed with. Rhodes. Look, I'm eating humble pie on that one. He's completely proved me wrong. Looks a player banging form, and Hernandez has been involved with every single Norwich City goal this season. Yeah.
They're, if you want to hold on to some positives, it's definitely Norwich going forward. Hernandez has added end product. He looks a world beater so far. I think he's 5 assists in 3 games or something, and as you say, he's been involved in every single Norwich goal in doing something within it. So his quality has been brilliant so far, and I think he stepped out of Maddison's shadow and really grabbed the mantle. Rhodes, as you say, I was a bit worried. Was he going to be this expensive lump who can't run anymore and can't score anymore? But
to be fair, he does run very oddly.
Yeah, he does run like a T-Rex. But
that's a good. Yeah, that's what I was thinking. What does he look like when he runs? It's definitely a T-Rex.
It's a bit like that. Isn't it? But no, he's been good so far, and it's not just his goal scoring. I think he's impressed me with his aerial ability.
Yeah. Defensively, yesterday was good as well.
Defensively, he was good yesterday. And I think he's held the ball up relatively okay, particularly against West Brom and Birmingham, less so yesterday. But I think he gets branded as a goal scorer, which he is, but it's not all he does.
Yeah. Good. Thank you for all of your Twitter questions. Let's get into previewing this week's games. So, if anything couldn't be going much worse, Connor, we welcome Alex Neil back to Carrow Road this week. It's a Wednesday game or Tuesday game? Wednesday game against Preston North End. I'm worried.
Yeah.
Tell me why not to worry, or are you also worried?
No, I'm not too worried at this stage. I think Norwich will get through this one. Preston, you run the mill Championship side. I mean, one thing Alex Neil's not going to let happen is for Norwich to sit around and lick their wounds for the first 20 minutes. They're going to have to start well, and they're going to have to be on it, because Neil is going to get his players right up for it, because he's going to want to win here. And I think Weather made some comments about him, didn't he?
Yeah.
So I think he's going to want to prove people.
There's going to be things chucked about before the game's even started.
Yes, yeah, and I mean, Norwich lose that, Carrow Road's going to be toxic, absolutely toxic. So
4 games in already.
I know. So the pressure on this game already, and it's ridiculous saying this 4 games in, is so huge. As I said earlier, not for the complexion of the season, but in terms of people's thoughts towards Farke, I think it's huge for him. And one thing Preston are going to be is solid and organised. Yeah, which is quite funny saying that for an Alex Neil team, but he has got them solid and organised.
He has, yeah, and of course the return of Declan Rudd as well. Mm-hmm. We look at Preston's form, mid-table, 1 win, 1 draw, 1 defeat. Admittedly, 0 goal difference. Am I also right in saying, talking about goal difference, Daniel Farke has never been in a positive goal difference?
Yeah, as far as I'm aware, that's correct. Yeah,
that's mad, isn't it? Preston's 1 win coming against Steve McLaren's QPR side, who do look relegation fodder at the moment. It is, of course, early doors. This, what team do we go for? There were a few questions that I didn't answer on there because there were a lot of people asking it. A lot of people saying, what changes do you make from Saturday's game going into this Preston game? It's going to be at home. There's always a home advantage. There will be a little bit more space, I think. What do we do? What team do we deploy to get that desperate win?
I think he'll go back to sort of the 4-1-4-1 at home.
4-1-4-1. Okay.
Yeah, which I know seems quite negative, but it's quite good because it's quite flexible. You can go to a 4-2-3-1 with it. You can go to a back 3 if you need be.
So we're still not going with 3 at the back.
I wouldn't personally yet, but purely but I would put Godfrey in that sort of the defensive midfield role. So if then there was an opportunity to change halfway through the game. Yeah. You could do that quite easily.
Well, I don't think Tete will be starting only because I think he went off with cramp.
I don't think Tete or Tribal will be starting particularly. I think it'll be. I think he'll turn to Godfrey, and I think he might turn to Thompson as well. Yeah. Just to try something different because if not, he's going to get pelters for trying the same thing.
And I'm not being funny. If I'm Ben Godfrey, if I'm Louis Thompson, having performed so well in pre-season, you've suddenly got a Remy Matthews situation on your hands. You've suddenly got a Yannick Bojko situation on your hands going, look, we've done all we can. You're not playing us for players that aren't performing. Mm-hmm. Send us out on loan.
Particularly Godfrey as well, because he obviously had such a good loan spell at Shrewsbury last year. It seems to me a waste of his time and a waste of his development to have him here sat on the bench. He needs to play games. And I do think he'll overtake Tete at some point. But I'm quite shocked it's not happened yet based on Tete's level of performance so far.
Because it hasn't been... They've not been world beating, have they? Tete's performances been been solid on the whole, but he's a man on the wrong side of 30.
Yeah. I mean, I like Tete. I always have. I think Norwich look much better as a side with him in it than without it. But there's going to have to be a point where you make way for him and try and bring someone else through. And I'd rather watch Ben Godfrey develop into a player that will be better than Alex Tete as he is declining. So. I personally think that's got to happen. It's got to happen soon because Tete doesn't really look particularly fit to me.
Score prediction for that one?
I think based on the fact Norwich have to win and based on the fact there's so much pressure around the game already, I think Norwich will just do it, but it'll be a tight 2-1.
2-1. I'm going to go 2-0. I think this game's going to be very similar to the QPR game at home last season when Harrison Reed scored that worldie. I think we also went into that game last season having not yet won a game, and that was a big one. Admittedly, it was completely different circumstances. It was all very early into the Farke regime, but we just about pulled through it. And then I think we then lost the following week to someone, I can't remember who it was. I think this could be something that might be just papering over the cracks a little bit. And then you go into Leeds, which we'll talk about. Bielsa's Leeds, flying high at the top. Will the bubble burst?
If the bubble bursts, I think it will burst spectacularly because of the way he is. He's nicknamed the Madman. Yeah. But he's an absolute genius about football, and he's got them playing football, which is quite revolutionary for this level, I think. So far they look unbeatable, but it's the sort of game Norwich pop up and play quite well in. Yeah. It's by sort of if you look at history and whatnot, but Norwich could get really really beaten heavily by Leeds because of the way they've set up and the way they're just brushing teams aside. And if Bielsa gets it to click, it's going to click so well, and they'll walk the league. But it is about that bubble bursting because it's just like a ticking time bomb. That
Bielsa's an interesting one. His nickname El Loco, isn't it?
Yeah,
I think.
which I think is madman. I think
yeah.
Dan O'Hagan said that.
So really? We'll trust Dan.
Yeah.
I was listening to the Football Ramble. I was speaking to you, kind of Bielsa. I think Leeds' owners, they were looking for a new manager. They flew out to Argentina and were interviewing Bielsa. They said, well, what do you know about Leeds, the club? And he then reeled off every single formation that they played throughout the season, the results, what he would have changed. And they were like, yeah, we'll give this man a job. It's going to be a fascinating one. Leeds fans always travel in numbers. It's going to be intimidating. I'm worried about that one, I must admit. But like you say, it could be a situation when Newcastle came down a couple of seasons ago, or Wolves last season. And we lost that game, but we often seem to perform quite well at home against the teams that don't expect us to.
Yeah, and I think if Norwich lose to Leeds, most people will probably shrug their shoulders and say, well, Leeds have had the start they've had. They're probably going to win the league. If based on early form, obviously anything can happen. But you have to judge what you've seen so far, and based on what you've seen, they've been the best team in the Championship for me. So it's going to be difficult, that one. But and Norwich aren't going to be able to get away with the sort of lateral possession football that they want to play because Bielsa has his team pressing so high and in packs, and it's not going to be pretty if Norwich try and play the way they have been. So
stick Hanley up top again. It worked for a little bit against West Brom.
Go for it. I mean, at this stage, we might as well give it a go.
Score prediction for that one?
I think it'll be quite a heavy defeat. I think it might be 3-1 Leeds.
3-1 Leeds. Yeah, I'm going to go for a Leeds win on that one as well. Despite that though, Connor, it's 2 home games in a week. If there were any fixtures we wanted, it would probably be 2 home games in a week after the start we've had.
Yeah. What's
the minimum points requirement we need from that? Or return, I should say.
Return. I think I think most supporters would be. I mean, if we're at this state, I think 3 for me personally, just because I don't think Norwich will compete with Leeds particularly. But I think if you're a fan looking at it and the situation Norwich are in, I think you'd be quite upset if they didn't get 4.
Yeah. For me, 4 is the minimum. I think you need to be beating Preston, and I think you need to be showing up and proving a point against Leeds.
Yeah, I think
because I think no matter how Leeds have played spectacular football this season, a loss is still a loss. A loss kills momentum. A heavy defeat certainly kills momentum. But more importantly, a loss kills fans' momentum more than anything. If you beat Preston, happy days, we're rolling again. You then lose to Leeds, you're back to square one. You go against Ipswich, and you've got that midweek trip to South Wales in between, which we're inevitably going to lose because we'll be playing kids. You're going into that off the back of a really shit time. So for me, 4 points minimum. Anything less than that, I'm worried.
Yeah, I think that's probably a fair reflection. It's been a really odd opening 3 games, I think, because I think if we sat here with Norwich having 9 points, I don't think anyone could have really complained based on the performances. But the fact they haven't, makes it a completely different situation. Yesterday, perhaps they didn't warrant a win as much as they did at Birmingham or as much as they did in that first half against West Brom. But had they have won the game, say had Lightner had scored, had Pukki or Rhodes have converted, and Norwich had won that game 2-1, I don't think anyone, particularly from a Sheffield United side, could have complained too much.
It would have been a great away performance.
Exactly. It would have been a really resolute Championship performance. But it's the fact that the issues are the same issues and they're not being rectified, which is the issue.
Definitely, and I think you just have to look at that stat. It's 3 wins in 19. This isn't I'm not suddenly saying that things need to change after 3 games. It's been a season and a bit. Anyway, that's that for this week. Thank you so much for watching episode 57 of the TNC podcast. As always, if you're listening on SoundCloud or iTunes, please subscribe on there and leave us a review. We've just hit 100 reviews on iTunes, which is good. We're still a 5-star rated podcast, which is lovely. Go and follow Connor on Twitter. A massive thank you to all of our main sponsors. I shall see you at Preston.
You shall.
See you later. Bye-bye.